So, as many of you know, on this podcast, Tim and I aim to mix up conversations with thought leaders, people who inspire us, and having a bit of a banter and a chat between ourselves. And this week, it's back to the two of us. We've been out of the hot seat for a while, and we meander around some of the different. In fact, we review some of the podcasts that we've had recently, particularly the one around patient activation, which we did with Alf Collins and Jag Mundra, two great thinkers in the field. So that was worth having a review and recap of. And then the one around GLP-1s with Nikki Coughlin. Again, such a hot topic. We thought we'd dive down a little bit into that. And that's taken us through other areas where we talk about some of the things we've been doing recently and some of the thoughts that have been going through our head. So hopefully you'll enjoy this session with us, perhaps giving a little bit of a recap of what we've been doing and where our thinking has been over the last few weeks.
Hi, Ollie.
So the pause is who's going first. Hi, Tim. It's lovely to see you.
Well, we're so well trained. We don't interrupt, do we, Ollie? That's the thing. We don't want to interrupt each other.
We could have just sat here just making kind of, encouraging eye contact at each other, couldn't we, for the 40 minutes? But it's been a while since we've sat down, the two of you and I, haven't we? We've had some fantastic interviews, which we might come to in a minute. But it's lovely to be sat here just having a chat with you, Tim.
Yeah, it's great to be back as well. I know. And there have been some really great conversations you've had. So this might be a little bit of a come down. I don't know. We'll try and keep people interested in what we've got to talk about because it'd be good to review that. So what have you been up to, though, in the interim? I mean, you've been interviewing some people. There's been great podcast material there. But what else have you been doing?
What have I been doing? I've been to a few conferences. I went to the Move More conference in Sheffield, which was fabulous to see. This is a movement that started with the Olympic legacy back in 2012. In fact, even before that. And it's been going strong in Sheffield. The baton's been handed on a number of times. And it was just great to see, 200 people gathering around helping to keep people physically active. And more importantly, it was more around systems that keep people physically active. I think we're moving away from, an individual having to be more active to how does a whole city to support people to make it easy to move more.
Yeah, so exactly. So it doesn't matter, doesn't it, how motivated people are to move and whether they've got the capability to move, but if they haven't got the opportunity to move and the systems aren't set up to do that, then guess what? They don't move more, do they? I saw a lovely clip of you doing some lovely kind of movement. I think it was kind of almost like a dance that you were doing. So yeah.
Well, it was great. I mean, it was one of those things where you think, oh yeah, no, is it a bit of a sort of nice to have a little movement break? This was Tracy, who runs a community interest company around getting people dancing. And I've been to some of her stuff. It's fantastic. She does great stuff with people recovering from strokes and other sort of rehab sort of situations, often just sitting in chairs. But actually, it's quite hard work. And you realise that, just with a bit of imagination, you can get some movement into everybody's life. And I think that was a theme for me of this conference was it's the community systems and the community kind of shared sort of enthusiasm and support that really makes this sort of stuff happen.
Yeah, it reminds me of that conversation I had with Callum Lease, and again, he's all about kind of movement. And again, us as professionals really taking the lead with that. So again, if patients and people come to see us and all we're doing is sitting around not being very active, then I think that doesn't communicate the right message. So he would say, you start with yourself. So, but you don't have to go and join a gym. It's just about doing a bit more movement.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's great, isn't it? And I think it's about everybody finding the thing that works for them, isn't it? And there's so many opportunities now. But, allowing yourself, I think most important, allowing yourself to enjoy it. If you're doing something that you really just think is a sort of, you ought to do it and you really don't enjoy it whilst you're doing it, you're never going to sustain it. So having some fun and some camaraderie really helps.
Yeah, great. So you've been to the Move More conference and you said another conference as well.
I went to the Sheffield Teaching Hospitals What Matters to You conference, beautifully organised. Led Alanthi Fowler, one of our friends and fellow GPs, has been leading that in the hospital for ages. But again, amazing to see a huge number of people there from the hospital. There are 2 sessions, morning and afternoon, which they repeated. So they must have had sort of 300 or 400 people across those 2 sessions. Again, it's really taken hold in that whole system, this theme of a hospital that's focused on what matters to you. They've written it into their whole next 10-year plan, their Care 2035. And it is that real, how do we, as a whole system, adopt a culture shift towards this approach?
Yeah. Well, it's really exciting. And I know I wasn't able to go to that conference, but I am involved in training the trainers. And again, that's really exciting. It's all very well for us to train people in organizations to have what matters to you conversations. And we're delighted to do that training. But even better when the organization takes it on as Sheffield Teaching Hospitals have done, and then invest in their own trainers. And I'm so excited about the trainers that we've got. We've got
Mm.
5
Yeah, yeah.
trainers.
How's that going, Tim?
Oh my goodness, they are so passionate about the work, and they've all got their own kind of personal stories as well that kind of they weave into the training, and just kind of bring that learning to life, really. So I'm really excited. I'm really excited. I think we've got our first session. So they've been through the training, and now we've got our first session. I think it's where are we? In 2 weeks' time. In 2 weeks' time. So where 2 of them are going to kind of go live with the training, and I'm going to be in the background as some support if they need it, which I don't think they will. But yeah, really excited, and actually having taken the teaching and the way that we do it, and actually making it their own. I think that's the most exciting part for me. Yeah.
Yeah, so I suppose we have got a bit of skin in the game here, haven't we, with Sheffield Teaching Hospitals and with a few other places as well, where we are inputting a little bit of education. So to actually say a bit more about that, Tim. So so it's what are we actually doing there with Sheffield Teaching Hospitals?
So in terms of do you mean in terms of the
And
what
so what
matters to you
matters to
training?
you? Yeah.
Yeah, well, I suppose what we're trying to do is have that what matters to you conversation as kind of part of how Sheffield Teaching Hospitals do stuff. So for whether you're arriving and it's kind of at the front door, or whether you're having some major kind of surgery, or whether you're having some rehabilitation, that everyone in that journey is very focused on you and what's important to you in that moment.
Mm.
So sometimes I think we, as professionals, and we can try and we're trying to move people along our process, aren't we? And it's all about trying to fit people into the boxes that we've got, which are very convenient for us, but maybe not that relevant to the people that we're working with. So how do you have that what matters to you conversation? And for some of us, it's kind of maybe a little bit how we do things anyway. But for some people, actually, and this has been a bit of a surprise, is that some people find it really difficult to get into that conversation. So our training is about, well, why it's important, why we need to do something different, and then how do we get people into that kind of conversation where they feel safe enough to share what really matters, and we listen to that really well, but also respond to it and do what really matters. And it just makes such a difference to people's experience of their care. Just because someone has taken the time to find out what's going on for you in your life, and out of all of that that's going on for you, what's really important right now.
Yeah, yeah.
Even if even if they're not able to do anything about that situation, the fact that someone's taken the time, and it doesn't take very long just to get to that point, I think people feel better looked after, better cared for, and they have a better cared experience. And also, the experience can be tailored to what matters to the person, which it doesn't get that much better than that, I think.
Yeah, no, I think we're definitely sold on it, aren't we? And so we wrote that sort of half-day course, didn't we, as a sort of introduction to everybody in the system. STH now sort of doing, like you say, a train the trainer program and rolling it out for as many staff as possible. Like you say, from the front door, so receptionists and healthcare assistants, peer support, maybe even right up to those conversations that a consultant anaesthetist might be having, or a surgeon or a manager might be having with their team. So it's across the whole system, right?
Yeah, and I think even people who are really, really experienced, I think sometimes what happens is that almost that bit just kind of gets pushed out. And so for even those people who are super experienced, they come on the training and they get just a reminder of like how important it is, because they get to have a what matters to you conversation with each other.
Mm.
And they realize how delightful that is, that someone has spent 5 minutes just listening to what matters to you. And as well as improving the care experience for the people that they are supporting and looking after, they also have what matters to you as part of their appraisal kind of process as well. So they have what matters to you appraisals. Again, this is not something that is just for the patients. This is also for your colleagues. So you're having
Yeah,
better conversations with your colleagues. And that has been one of the other delightful parts of the training, actually, is when you get teams together and maybe for the first time, they are having what matters to you conversations with each other. And you can see the level of trust, just builds because they now know what matters to each other, which is
yeah.
great.
Brilliant, brilliant. I love that. And it's great you've been doing that train the trainer with them. And we're, of course, starting with a few other sites as well, aren't we? But I like the fact that it's a double win, isn't it? You got better skills for working with patients and improving patient care, but then that same skill set is applicable colleague to colleague and appraisals or line management or even just conversations with each other that improves the quality of the relationships and the listening and stuff. Yeah, great. Wow. And it was fantastic, to be honest with you, at that conference. The chairman of the board was at that conference of all day and basically, sort of couldn't have been more enthusiastic about this being the way he wants the hospital to go. Absolutely fantastic to see that commitment from the senior board right the way through the whole hospital teams. Brilliant.
Yeah.
Wow.
I'd love
This is
Yeah, God, I
go
was
on.
saying that I'd love it to be kind of mandatory training, but not like the mandatory training that everyone goes, oh,
The health and safety stuff or the
yeah, not
moving and
that.
handling or
Wouldn't that be
yeah.
great though? If actually, when you joined an organization, part of your induction was part of your, is look, this is the way we do things, and here's the training. Anyway, I'm not going to put suggestions to them like that, but
No, well, it seems to be that's what they're sort of doing, isn't it? 15,000 staff in Sheffield Teaching Hospitals, and they're training their own internal trainers so that they can hopefully build that in as part of business as usual for them, as much throughout as much of the system as they can.
yeah,
Wow, we better move on, Tim. We
yeah,
could talk about what matters your day, couldn't we? But we were going to use this as a sort of review, aren't we? Of some of the there's been some brilliant podcasts. I've been involved in them, but it's really about bringing voices to the public domain, isn't it? And a couple that really, recently have really stood out to me. That the patient activation one and the GLP one. But you've been in more in listening mode, Tim. What stood out to you? Should we start with the patient activation one with Alf Collins and Jag Mundra? How did that
yeah.
land for you?
Well, it was interesting, wasn't it? Because you had Alf and his history, I suppose, and his wisdom, that's been there for many kind of decades, actually. And he's been there from the start. And so what was really good listening in was seeing how this evolved, this patient activation kind of measure, and how it was used in the early days. And then you've almost got like the new kid on the block kind of coming in with Jag, kind of going, oh yeah, but now this is how we can use it in a very practical, and yeah, in a very practical way, because it's almost like being. I suppose now I'm thinking about it, it's been this kind of top down bit, and then Jag kind of brings this bottom up. Actually, he's kind of said he's gone to the people and said, okay, what would be a really good question that you could easily ask people, that would kind of speak to the same thing of people's confidence, knowledge, and skills. And so we've gone from this 22 questionnaire validated tool down to 13 questions, down to 10 questions. They tried 6, wasn't quite sensitive enough. But I know we've struggled, haven't we, to kind of, the system has struggled to incorporate those into the way it does stuff. I know there have been places where they have done it, but then here Jag comes along and go, actually, guys, let's just make it really, really simple. And if we make it really, really simple, then we can make it really scalable and really straightforward for people to do. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
what one of my take homes anyway.
Yeah, no, Brett, I like that. It was a lovely combination. I mean, you think of they could say the GOAT, don't they? The greatest of all time. I'd say Alf is that experienced guru, isn't it? And he has really driven this through our whole career, isn't it? I remember he was part of the Co-Creating Health with Health Foundation and bringing patient activation into the mainstream. He was the one who introduced us into the PAM pilot. Do you remember way back when we first started using it in Sheffield, probably 10 years ago now, when the NHS England were experimenting with it. And then he, of course, as director of personalised care, he led it coming into the NHS through the new roles, through health coaches and through social prescribing link workers, and that whole theme of trying to build agency and autonomy in people. And like you say, then Jag is making it real, isn't it? I mean, Jag's been around for a while as well himself. He's not just the new kid on the block, but he's just the way his approach, like you say, is really new, isn't it? That sort of, let's make it simple. Let's not necessarily worry too much whether it's the validated version. Sure, you can bring that in if you really want the kind of the kind of robustness of a validated tool, but let's just use quick and dirty things to get people focusing in. And his one question, Pam, has been really effective as another piece of the jigsaw, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, and exactly. I mean, I think what is it that we're trying to measure here? And one of the things that I know we talk about is about how you tailor your care. Well, again, if you can get an idea of how to tailor your care from one question, then let's use that. If that one question you can use that as a measure of the impact of the work that you're doing. Let's just use that one question, which is,
And
I
it's
think,
really effective. So,
yeah,
I mean, there's nothing like putting it into your own practice. I mean, I've been running a community pain clinic for the last year, and we decided to use that one question, Pam. How good are you at looking after your health? Just really simple question with the answers of not very, okay, good, or excellent. And I noticed the shift in people when they move from either, really typically what they come in, they say they're okay looking after themselves, and they move to good. And that is a really interesting change. And you can say, oh, and I noticed that, when we first started seeing you, you said you're okay looking after yourself. And now you say you're good. And they go, yeah, I am. I've got better. And you can just feel that. You can feel that confidence in the way they answer it back to you. Yeah, I have. I'm good at looking after myself now. And almost that feels like it's the kind of key shift in people, because after that, everything just sort of flows and they start to find their own stuff and they start to put things into practice. And, but it's great. It does, in my experience, it does back up what I see in people.
yeah. And I suppose that is it's good for them to see that. It's also good for us to know that the work that we're doing is in some way impacting in people's kind of perception of how good they are looking after themselves. Yeah.
Yeah, no,
it
completely. It's a great one for health coaching, isn't it? Because you wonder, what does health coaching do? What is it? What is it actually achieving? And sometimes people are worried about, is it going to stop people turning up at A&E, or is it going to reduce the prescribing or whatever? And we know ultimately it does. But of course, initially, what health coaching does is help people to feel more confident themselves, isn't it? And this skills, knowledge, and confidence to look after yourself is a great first step, I think. So having a way of measuring it and capturing change, can really underpin the first steps of whole system change, I think.
Yeah. So yeah, and again, there was a paper that you had written again, with them as well. And again, I don't know if you want to say a bit about that, because I think that was really helpful in terms of this new move to kind of neighborhoods. What I loved about the paper, which again people can get to on our website, on our blog page, there's a longer read there. And what I loved about it was that it wasn't just here's a whole load of theory. It's kind of here's some practical points that actually, if you're starting to work in neighborhoods, here's some things that you could practically do that shines a light on activation.
Yeah, no, I was delighted to have shared the authorship of that with Alf and Jag. And that's really what led into the last podcast, actually. I don't know if that came across. In fact, we were talking with Manal Bakai when she was leading the NHS neighbourhood programme, the NHIP programme. And she had specified that people activation was a core part of neighbourhood development. She's done a lot of co-production, a lot of co-design, and it had really emerged strongly, not surprisingly. So she'd asked Alf and Jag and myself to write a bit of a pragmatic sort of overview for emerging neighbourhoods. And it was a great process. And it was a real shame, actually, because Manal sort of changed a role in NHS England, and it was going to be sort of published in their domain. So it was very generous that Alf and Jag said, let's get it out there, put it on your website. So we'll put a link in the show notes to the paper. But we tried to make it really pragmatic and really doable. And one of the things that really I was particularly proud of really with this is that we talked about 4 domains where activation, or the concept of activation, comes out. And I think this is around thinking about systems, and, integrated neighbourhood teams are really going to be an opportunity to think about how systems work together. So we thought about these 4 levels where activation is important. So, on the personal, individual level, for sure, as we've talked about, building someone's individual, confidence and knowledge, build around what matters to them. But then on, other levels as well. So on a group level, a service level, and then on a community level. And a group level is how people work together socially. So whether that's peer-to-peer support or group consultations or group education, that you focus on the dynamic of how together people build their activation. And then the service bit, I guess, is how you design your service purposefully. Do your clinicians value activation and the value of building people's agency and autonomy? And are your systems set up to measure whether or not you're doing it and whether or not that's actually happening? And if it's not, how do you tweak your system so it's real, the whole team and sort of pathway design together. And then the last one really is your community activated, and I think that brings in things like the value of social prescribing and attention to the wider determinants of health, like housing and finance and access to, spaces to exercise in, green spaces, blue spaces. And that, I guess, is wider than just the NHS. It involves the local authority. It involves, all those community groups that contribute to health in general, health and well-being in general. So I was really proud of the fact that we were trying to describe a whole system approach, but then went into really pragmatic kind of easy wins that Jag is so good at.
Yeah, and I think that's the key, isn't it? Because the thing that kind of has got in the way of, I think, the activation being taken forward and focused on has been the slight clunkiness of the measuring tool. But now actually we've got something which can, well, maybe give us a bit of an idea about someone's activation just from that single question. I think it feels doable. And what I loved about what Jag was saying when he was on the podcast was actually, if it feels like if you feel like you're not making progress, it's because you're aiming too high. So just bring it down to, it's very kind of way, he speaks like a coach, doesn't he, really? It's like, if it feels too difficult, just bring it back, make it, what's the easiest thing you could do? What's the first step? What's the easiest first step you could make towards this thing? So let's not make it too hard. Let's make it too difficult. Just bring it right down.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. He's a master of that. So, he's going to got, again, sort of 4 steps of how you might sort of, integrate this into your system. So I'd really love people to have a look at that paper and to sort of, tell us what you think. I mean, hopefully we'll get it more widely published. It would be good to have proper sort of peer scrutiny of it. But yeah, for the time being, please do keep using sort of LinkedIn and social media and let us know what you think. And, sort of, I know we'll all be very much involved in this emerging conversation because it's emergent, isn't it? Neighbourhoods are developing, our approach to integrated care is developing, but we need to keep the dialogue going.
Yeah. Just one last thing on that before we move on is what I loved again in the paper was about the attention not just to patients and the people we're supporting, but also our staff, and kind of thinking about kind of staff well-being and staff activation and paying attention to that. And again, using things like, that kind of, that single kind of measure of, is, I'm just trying to think of it, is this a good place to work? What's the question? Does this
Yeah,
feel
that's this employer net promoter score thing, actually,
That's right. How
which is
likely are you to recommend this place, this as a place to work? How likely are you to recommend this as a place to work? Lovely question. And then the follow-up question, like, what's one thing that would improve your score?
yes.
Again, it's just a little nudge. One, we're interested in what you think about this place to work, as is we are interested in how good are you at looking after your health. But then the follow-up question is like, what's something that would help you look after your health better? Or what's something that would make this place a better place to work? It just gets the conversation going, doesn't it?
It does, and it's that coaching style of inquiry, isn't it? And I think what's great is this is not just limited to healthcare, isn't it? Actually, those sort of questions you can bring into workplaces, and where we're starting to see health coaches go into employment settings, those sort of questions are generic across that. So if you've got someone in a workplace and you're coaching them and you're helping them to feel better about themselves, actually they often feel more engaged with work. They're more likely to recommend it as a place to work, and that's a great marker of how you're creating a system where people thrive in the workplace. And we know, we're not going to go into it now, I know, but all the associations then with increased productivity, reduced absenteeism, reduced staff turnover are really good for businesses as a whole. So this is really it's a win-win all round. But these are sort of generic skills, I think, that are very applicable across lots of settings.
Yeah. So I think we do need to move on, but and I think the other podcast that kind of stood out recently was the one with Nikki, which was the metabolic health and GLP-1. So it's about GLP-1s, wasn't it, specifically, because she had loads and loads of experience of. Well, I think she feels like she was there before it became big, almost really, in terms of her support for people who were taking GLP-1s. But say a bit more, Ollie.
Yeah, completely. I mean, yeah, before it was really super trendy, wasn't it? I
Yeah.
mean, it's crazy, isn't it, to think now that, so Nikki Coughlin, she defines herself as a GLP-1 coach. And she's been doing it for over 5 years now, and was working with a company in Ireland that was one of the pioneers of prescribing GLP-1 injections, as they were then. There's oral tablets now even, but giving really good wraparound support, which is interesting, isn't it? That wraparound support is increasingly being seen as the enabler that Nikki, I love the way Nikki put it. She talks about the drug giving you a window of opportunity, but actually how you use that window of opportunity is very much around how you're supported and how you deal with a whole lot of the other human stuff that sits alongside the kind of the chemistry and the kind of pharmacology that you're adjusting with the medication. Yeah, it was a pleasure, real pleasure to talk with Nikki.
Yeah, and I know when GLP-1s were first being used for weight loss specifically, I remember feeling really like my heart sank a bit. I have to
I
say,
know.
be honest, that actually I thought, oh no, here's another kind of quick fix. But I have to say, I've been on a bit of a journey with that, and I
Yeah,
think a lot of the health coaches have been on a bit of
yeah.
journey with that as well. Because I remember a supervision session, and someone was like, oh, well now they've got these injections. Now people aren't really engaged with health coaching. And there was that feeling. But
Yes.
actually, we turned the conversation around, and actually, people were thinking, actually, this is a real opportunity. If people are using these medications, then let's see, well, what can a health coach add to that? And of course, what a health coach can add to that is loads.
Oh, well, that was the thing that came out with. I mean, Nikki is part of our GLP-1 course now as well. So I've had the chance to do a bit of teaching with her and do the podcast with her. And the thing that's really the penny drop for me has been around, the way the GLP-1s work is they sort of block your, they block them in the brain and the stomach, your sort of drive to eat food. And that's great because it takes away that food noise, the sort of where a lot of people really have this pressure for food to eat food to sort of like keep them, emotionally regulated. But of course, if you haven't got that, how do you keep yourself emotionally regulated? And that's the really big thing, isn't it? Is that you take away this kind of like crux that food's provided for a lot of people, and you need to fill it with something else. We're all emotional eaters. That's what Nikki says. We're all emotional eaters to some degree. It provides, some positive feedback for us. It's often social, or it's kind of like just downright enjoyable, isn't it, to have a nice meal, or just a food that you enjoy. So you take that away, and how do you cope with that? And so that's where health coaching really comes in. How do you manage your emotions, and how do you manage one patient that Nikki said she talked about, it was like losing a friend. So, you sort of block that kind of, friendly support that food gives you, and there's a massive hole in your life. So you can imagine, can't you, how health coaching can be really helpful about helping people navigate the emotional side alongside, if you like, the kind of purely drug effect.
Yeah, and also, of course, so we know, the importance of kind of maintaining muscle mass and all of that as well. So again, there'll be other things
100%.
that health coaches can support people in, kind of being aware of that, but also, yeah, like you say, looking at the emotional side. So it feels like a real opportunity. So I'm glad the conversation has shifted, and also my mindset has shifted. So I'm glad that's happened, because I can see that there's real potential here, and I gather that, and again, this came across in the podcast, that there's maybe moves to start to use it in kind of addiction kind of work as well. So again, that's all very interesting, but it's not just the chemicals aren't enough, are they, by themselves? You can imagine it's hugely complex, and therefore what you need is someone like a health coach who's got lots of experience in how to help people think really well for themselves about what they're going to do, how they're going to fill that gap, what are they going to do now that that food noise has died down. Yeah.
Yeah, no, and I think it just emphasizes to me that we're always on a journey, aren't we? Whether that's you're on a journey of weight loss or obesity management, which is really a lifelong sort of a commitment in a way, really, isn't it? How we manage ourselves, it's very variable. It's a journey. It's not just a one-off thing, an intervention. It's a journey, and I feel like we're on a journey as a as clinicians and as a system as well, aren't we? And I'm seeing emerging, this feeling that it's not just the drug, it's the wraparound support that's really important. And I even saw something on LinkedIn from Eli Lilly, who are one of the big manufacturers of these drugs, and they're starting to team up with the behavioral support platforms, which, by the way, usually includes some human element in there as well. It's, we could, I'm seeing this kind of mix of, sort of AI-led health coaching. Fantastic. I've used it myself. I'm really impressed. But even the biggest companies are looking at the importance of having some human element in there as well. So it's really interesting to see this evolving.
Yeah, and it is a challenge. I mean, this came up in supervision recently. Was that kind of question for someone who was supporting people, was supporting people via text, and how interesting that is, and how do you build rapport? How do you build that trust just via text messaging? So again, it's going to be an emerging kind of skill for people to be able to do that. But interesting, not.
Yeah, how fascinating. So that was it. Then it was in supervision. I obviously can't reveal too much, but what came out of that then? Where did the conversation go? That's
Well,
fascinating.
well, it was interesting. We didn't get to that question. It was just, but it has sat with me. It has sat with me because I'm thinking, yeah, how do you do that? Because we rely so much, don't we, on body language and paying attention to the tone of voice and all of those kind of things and everything that kind of communicates meaning. And some of that is stripped away, isn't it? When it's just a text message, it's even more stripped away than even like a telephone call.
Yeah.
So we didn't get that. I'd love to have that question back. So hopefully that person will come back to another supervision session and we will kind of tackle that question, because even though that's not most coaches' experience, they're not doing that. I do wonder whether it's something that we need to explore. It's a little bit like, how do we support people who are using coaching AI tools?
Yeah, yeah.
How do we support people who are doing that? Because it's not like, oh, well, if you're doing that, you don't need me. Of course you do. Of course you do. Because
Yeah,
we
it's
need the
it's it's a
human element, I
fascinating
would say.
time. It is a fascinating time, isn't it, really? Because, you've got so many different modalities. I guess once you've got that coaching mindset that you're going to try and help people to discover what's going to work best for them. I like that, Tim, about the supervision even. You didn't answer the question. You raised the issue, and I guess you're all going off to think about it, maybe come back to it next session. But, you've got asynchronous stuff now, haven't you? Whether that's a text from a human, um, an automatic message coming out from your GP, or of course, AI chatbots now that we're all interacting with. It's so many of us are using them, aren't they? And the one I'm using. There's no tone of voice. There's no. There's a sort of the turn of phrase in the messages coming back, which is very impressive. But it's totally asynchronous, isn't it? You can put it down. You can have a conversation over the period of a week. You can have a conversation over a period of 20 minutes. And it doesn't forget what you've said. It kind of recalls stuff, and it's just fascinating the different levels of modality of interaction you can have. But of course, then it doesn't have that same sort of warmth and, to some degree, vulnerability that you have with talking to another human live in person, where you can see each other's body language, or like this over Zoom. Where maybe you've got eye contact and you've got some movement, but you've not got quite that in the room rapport. There's just so many different modalities that we can use now, aren't there?
Yeah, and I suppose it hasn't got empathy. I mean, it has got no idea what it's like to be human.
What AI,
And
the
again,
AI, yeah, no, that
yeah, the
we're gonna
AI.
we're gonna I know I think I'm planning to sort of have a bit of a session on this, maybe a panel discussion or a group debate. I'm gonna work out what we're gonna do, but because I think this is such an emergent area, isn't it? Where do AI chatbots and AI health coaches sit alongside human coaching? I think it's a fascinating area, isn't it?
Yeah, and again, it's gonna be an area for us to engage with and see where it goes. We mustn't ignore it a bit. A bit like how we've maybe moved our viewpoint a little bit with GLP-1s. We need to kind of see where the opportunities are to add value rather than dismiss it. It's either this or that. It can't be. I don't think we'd be thinking like that now.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? No, sorry, you started to talk there about what you think the sort of differences are then in between an AI health coach and a human health coach. I know it's going to be an ongoing conversation, isn't it? But what's your thinking at the moment then, Tim?
Well, I think yeah, I suppose, I mean, you've had more experience because I think you've been using that for yourself. So I'll be interested in your views on that, really, because
Nice turnaround.
well, I've got loads, I've got assumptions, that actually maybe there might not be so much challenge, potentially, although I'm sure you could set it to be more challenging. But I don't know how well it will sense, what you're coming in with, because it doesn't have that empathy. But you've got more experience, so
Well, I've been deliberately putting myself there, and I've used some of the just off the shelf, just a simple paid version of ChatGPT, and had some very interesting interactions. Particularly when you think about the sort of prompts you might feed it with to kind of encourage the large language model to use coaching style techniques. But then I've also been using some of the packages that have been set up as well, deliberately set up, and I sort of didn't want to like them. Do you know what I mean? I wanted it to be a sort of failed experiment. And interesting, I've seen Ben Allen talk about the failed experiment of an AI receptionist that just can't replace that kind of like deep connection that receptionist makes the patient. These tools have worked really nicely for me actually, and I've been, unfortunately pleasantly surprised. And you have to embrace it because this is the future, isn't it? It's going to enable people to have many more people to have coaching style conversations. But what fascinates me is where does the human fit in? And that I think that the AI, no matter how good it'll ever get, can never actually have that shared human experience. It won't know what it's like to have guilt, fear, shame, anxiety, feel stupid, feel elated. It just won't ever have that shared experience of being human. So there will always be a block to how far you can go with it, I think. But it's great at helping you to hold you to account, scaffold what you're doing and how you're doing it. But maybe it's not so good at the deep emotional bit of why you're doing it. So I think how we work out where fellow humans hold each other to account and explore the deep emotional bit alongside, the sort of democratization of access to coaching style approaches is really interesting.
yeah. And I'm also now thinking, because obviously, I mean, trained as a time to think coach. And I think
Yeah.
a lot of that is about how do you hold the space? How do you hold the silence? And I wonder whether that's something where the human really, um, yeah, is able to do that. A well-trained human is able to do that, where a machine just doesn't in the same way, because it's different sitting in the same space with with a human holding the space for you, as opposed to, a chat bot which is just silent. It's not quite the same. I don't think.
Yeah, no, no, and we've always been a big fan, haven't we, of Nancy Kline's Time to Think. What is it that creates an environment for human brains to think well? And I think some of these tools are going to support us, but we've got to be careful that they don't undermine our ability to think well as well, because ultimately that's the bottom line, isn't it? It's around. I mean, I love it. I saw a thing just recently again in Open JAMA where they were looking at using, wearables and sort of like feedback, biofeedback, whether it's from blood tests or wearables or whatever, coupled with some coaching, some of it automated, but some of it human. And what I really liked about it was that the end outcomes were how much you valued yourself, how good you felt about yourself. It was in sort of the context of burnout at work as well. And, did people appreciate and enjoy their work, feel their work was meaningful and manageable and those sort of things? But I think the focus on people's sense of self-worth and self-value and, as Nancy Kline would say, how well they're thinking, is really crucial. And yeah, it's good if we're kind of focusing on the right things.
Yeah. Well, again, and we've talked about this previously, haven't we? But that kind of that hierarchy that we think is really important, that kind of the base of the kind of that triangle is self-belief, self-efficacy, self-worth. And actually, if you don't have that, if you don't invest anything in that, then it doesn't matter what else you do in terms of health behaviors, because they won't last if you don't think you're worth it. So we have
Yeah,
to
yeah,
invest in that part, I think.
completely, completely. Amazing, amazing. Well, Tim, we wondered if we'd have much to banter about, but we've managed to kind of fill a good 40 minutes or so, haven't we? And it's I wonder if we should sort of draw to a close. And is there anything else that you want to add, Tim? Anything that's been going through your mind recently?
No, I think that's a good time to end. Again, there'll be some more brilliant podcasts and interviews coming up. So again, please keep
Yes,
keep
you've
looking into
recorded
those.
you recorded one with Paul Houseman. Is that one coming up
Paul
soon, Tim?
Houseman, yeah. So that should be coming up soon. So again, I think this may be, we'll have to see kind of which order we release them. But yes, I think
Right.
Paul Houseman, which again, he came to speak at our conference, and he's got a lot to say about how you look after staff, how do you look after your team. So lots of really good stuff and insights from him.
Yes, I think this is coming next, and he'll be the next one up. So yeah, fantastic what Paul's been doing, and of course he's been spanning really, isn't he? The sort of health sector and the workplace sector and workplace support. So much coming together. I'm looking forward to that one. Tim, it's been an absolute pleasure to chat again. Enjoy the rest of your week.
Yeah, and you, Ollie. Okay, see you later.
Take care.